Hello everyone. In this module, we are going to learn about annotations and arrows. And following are the topics that we are going to cover in this module. Firstly, we will discuss about annotation. After that, we will discuss about arrow. So in the previous module, you have learned that the text function places text at a certain location on the plot. But sometimes we want to highlight certain features of a graph, and for this Matplotlib pyplot modules provide annotate function. So let's take closer look at what this function does. But before we talk about the annotate function, firstly I will define what it means to annotate. Annotate means to label something. Now we will discuss about annotate function. Annotate method allow us to make annotation quickly and easily, and it allows us to add text to the plot in the same way the text function does. And the syntax of annotate function is matplotlib.pyplot.annotate, and in parentheses we pass different parameters. The first one is text, the next one is xy, after that arguments, and we also have keyword argument. So let's have a look at the parameters. The text parameter takes value in string format, and it is nothing but the text that we want to annotate. The other parameter is xy. It take value in float and it represent the point x and y to annotate. The next parameter is xy text. It also take values in float and it is the x and y position to place the text. After that we have one more parameter, that is arrow prop. It takes value in dictionary and this parameter is used to draw an arrow. And the last parameter is annotation underscore clip, and it will take value in boolean, either true or false. This parameter is used to specify whether you want to draw arrow outside the axis area or not. And if you want to draw it, you have to pass the value false. And if you doesn't want to draw it, you have to pass value true. Now I will tell you what is the difference between text function and annotate function. The distinction between text and annotate function is that there is an additional argument to specify the arrow property. In the previous module, you have seen that we doesn't specify arrows in the text function, but in this annotate function we add arrows to the text or a plot also. So let's see examples related to annotate function first. So here is the code in which we want to learn to add text on the plot using a annotate function. So I explain you this code first. Firstly, I import the library matplotlib.pyplot as plt. After that, I define data coordinate, temp and visitors. Then I create a scatter plot by calling the scatter function, and I pass temp and visitor variables which I define above to it. Then I call the annotate function to add text on the plot. As a text, I passed highest visitor. Next, I pass xy value, which is 55 and 900, where x point is 55 and 900 is y point to which it annotates. Next, I pass xy text value, which is 39 and 885, in which x position to place a text is 39 and the y position to place text is 885. Then I also pass one more argument, that is color, and I set its value to orange. After that I pass one more parameter and font size and set its value to 15. And the last parameter which I pass is font family and I set its value to cursive. Then I call the x label and y label function. So we add labels at the axis. So, and it represents that x label shows average daily temperature and the y label represent the number of visitors. Then I call the title function to get to know what this plot represents. So with this we know that this plot represents the minimum beach visitors. And in last I call the show function to display the plot. Now I execute this code. You can see that the text highest visitors are annotated on the x coordinate 55 and the y coordinate 900. Then we set the text x position to 39 and text y position to 885, and I additionally pass the color argument, so it changed the color of the text to orange, font size to 15 and font family to cursive. So now let's see one more example in which we will learn to add text on the plot with arrow using the annotate function. So firstly I import the libraries. So first I import Matplotlib pyplot library as plt and numpy library as np. After that I define data coordinate, and for defining x I use a range function of numpy library and cost function of numpy library to define y. Then I call the plot function to create a line chart between x and y, and I also pass LW parameter and set its value to 2, which means line width. So it increases the width of the line to 2. After that I call the annotate function to add a text with arrow on the plot. So as a text I pass max value, xy value I pass 6.4 and 1, xy text value I pass 2 and 0.95, and I also pass additional parameter which is arrow prop, and I pass empty dictionary to it, and in last I call the show function to display the plot. Now I execute this code and you can see that here the plot occurs with the arrow and the text. So the text max value is annotated on the x coordinate 6.4 and the y coordinate 4, and the text x and y position is set to 2 and 0.95 respectively. And I also pass arrow props parameter with empty dictionary to it, so it adds arrow to the plot also. Now we will learn if we want to add arrow or a text outside the plot, how we can do it. So for this, I import library matplotlib pyplot as plt first. After that, I define data coordinate x and y. Then I call the plot function to create a line chart, and I also pass marker parameter to it and I set its value to small o. Then I call the annotate function, and here I pass line chart as a text, xy value as 0.5 and 25, xy text value as -1 and 25. Then I pass arrow props parameter and I set its value to empty dictionary, and additionally I pass annotate underscore clip parameter and I set its value to false, so it creates a arrow outside the plot, and in last I call the show function to display the plot. Now I execute this code. Now you can see that it annotates outside the plot, which means it create arrow outside the plot and also add text to it. So what will happen if I change the annotation underscore clip value to true? Now I change it and execute this code. You can see that it doesn't annotate anything outside the plot. So if we want to annotate outside the plot, we have to pass an additional parameter annotation underscore clip and set its value to false, so that we get the annotated text outside the plot. Now we will move to our next topic, that is arrow. Till now we have learned how to use arrows to annotate text in and around the figure. However, there may be instances when we simply want arrows and no words. For this purpose, Matplotlib provides the arrow function. So let's take a closer look to it. The arrow function in Matplotlib adds arrows on the axis, and the syntax of this function is matplotlib.pyplot.arrow, and in parentheses we pass different parameters. The first is x, the next one is y, the other is dx, the next is dy, and last one is keyword argument. So let's have a look at the parameters. The first parameter is x and y. It take value in floats. It is x coordinate and y coordinate of the plot. The other parameter is dx and dy. It also take value in float and it is nothing but the length of arrow along the x and y direction. The next one is width. It take value as a float and it specifies the width of full arrow tail. The another is head underscore width. It takes value as a float and it specifies the total width of the full arrow head. And the last one is head underscore length. It takes value as a float and it is used to specify the length of the arrow head. Now we will see some examples related to this. And here is the code in which we learn to add arrow on the plot. So I explain you this code. Firstly, I import the library matplotlib.pyplot as plt. After that, I define data coordinate x and y. Then I call the plot function to create a line chart between x and y, and to add an arrow on the plot, I call the arrow function and I set its x value to 0.5, y value to 1.75 and dx value to 0.15 and dy value to 0.5. I additionally pass head underscore width parameter and set its value to 0.2. Next, I pass the width parameter. I set its value to 0.1. Next, I pass EC argument, which means edge color, and I set its value to green. Next, I pass FC parameter, which means face color, and I set its value to orange. Then I call the title function to add a title to the plot, so we get to know what this plot represents. So with this we know that this plot represents the plot with an arrow. And in last I call the show function to display the plot. Now I execute this code and here is the output. You can see that it creates a plot with an arrow. So the arrow has x position at 0.5, y position at 1.75 and the length of arrow along x-axis is 0.15, along y-axis it's 0.5. I additionally pass head width parameter. So the head width of the arrow set to 0.2, the width of the arrow is 0.1, the arrow has edge color green and the face color orange. So with this we learn to add an arrow to the plot without any text. So with this we have learned about annotations and arrows in Matplotlib, and in the next module we will learn to create subplots.